Good morning. Come on in, take a seat. There are some empty seats up here, so fill in these seats. My name is Danielle Bays. I'm with the Humane Society of the United States, and I am your workshop moderator today. Welcome to Up Your Ante, Leading Edge Technologies to Raise Your Game, with Greg Lucas, Sheila DePino, Michael Greenberg, Lars, Rabbe, and David Meyer. I hope I pronounced your names correctly. Apologize if I didn't. And as always, thanks, Maddie.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Lars Rabbe. I'm Chief Information Officer for Maddies Fund, and I'm going to try to moderate this motley crew up here. So first of all, let me just briefly introduce your panel. So Sheila DePino, Dr. Sheila DePino is with Maddies Fund as well, animal behaviorist, and also behind several applications that we've developed at Maddies Fund. Greg Lucas is founder and CEO of ShelterLuv, one of the newest shelter management systems out there. Mike Greenberg is with Target Zero, that hopefully you've heard about. And David Meyer is founder CEO of AdoptAPet. So hopefully we have enough background that we can answer your questions. In preparation for this, we sent out a survey, and a number of you responded to that. We called through the answers and came up with what we consider to be sort of what are the things that you might be most interested in learning about here. What we're going to try to do is give you hints and direction for how you may address some of the technology issues that you're seeing in your particular environments. And what we would like to do is go through these questions first and let the panel talk about it, and then we'll have Q&A at the end of the session. And there should be enough time for that as well. Before we start, I just want to give a brief commercial, since I'm the one who has the microphone, for Maddies Fund. One of the things that we're trying to do at Maddies Fund, in addition to giving you all grants and trying to help life-saving in general, is to provide technology solutions for some of the things that we think are not out there. As part of that, we've worked with both ShelterLuv and AdoptAPet and Target Zero to try to help them get better solutions to market, but we also developed some things ourselves. So I would like to encourage you to visit our booth upstairs and see Maddies University, which we're just launching here, a learning management system that you can use in your shelters to put together the right learning for your volunteers and employees. And also Maddies Pet Forum. Maddies Pet Forum is going to be the destination for all great things, all great discussions, and all knowledge for our industry. And we're going to use that also as the place where we are going to follow up from this session, so that anything that you hear here and any discussions that we may start will continue on Maddies Pet Forum. So without further ado, the questions that, or the answers that came back, there were many different subjects that came up, and we sort of ordered the sequence in order of what we thought was based on the number of answers that came back. What would you be most interested in? So the first one was, how do you support your fostering process, and including recruitment, tracking, and how do you document what's going on? So, Sheila, you want to talk a little about that?
Thank you, Lars. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
I just want to start by saying that I am a veterinary behaviorist and a person who has worked in shelters first and a technology person second. I consider myself a great appreciator of technology, and I've been fortunate enough to use technology in many different aspects of my career, both as being as a veterinarian, being as someone who is working in shelters, being someone who is developing programs for shelters. So I have experience with technology in many different areas, and as I said, a great appreciator. Foster care has been a great interest of mine and of Maddies Fund for the past couple of years, if not longer. And with regard to foster care, lots of different areas with technology where we have challenges. And one of the biggest challenges that got reported to us in the survey that we sent out, and has been reported to us via other surveys and information we've gained from you all, is foster care recruitment. How many of you have challenges recruiting foster caregivers? Some of you, great. How many of you think it's easy to recruit foster caregivers? A couple of you, great. We probably want to hear from you later.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we're going to start by talking about things as Lars said. I'm going to be talking about things in kind of an overview in the hope that that's going to spur questions for later on in the conversation. But, and I forgot to mention that at Maddie's Fund, we had our own foster-based adoption program for a year or two, so I have experience in that area as well. And in terms of recruiting foster caregivers, all I can say is social media is your friend. For those of you who say recruiting foster caregivers is easy, are you social media recruiters or not necessarily? Yeah, great. But Facebook posting stories about pets that need to go into foster care are really, really successful. We found that posting stories about individual pets were much more successful than just saying, we need foster caregivers, come foster for us. You post that picture, people have an attraction to that individual pet and they come. And one of my colleagues, Kelly Dewar, out in the audience, looked at social media of successful foster programs versus less successful foster programs. And she found that, and this isn't scientific data, it's her evaluating people's Facebook pages, but successful foster programs, over 30% of their social media posts are about foster care. So you need to be talking about foster care all the time on social media, not just here and there. Instagram and Twitter, obviously those are things that can be helpful as well, but I have found that Facebook for us has been number one. Anybody use Craigslist for recruiting foster caregivers? One person in the audience. I know there's a lot of controversy about Craigslist, but one organization that Cattown in California started using Craigslist, and we started using it as well. And Cattown finds that it's a great way to recruit cat foster caregivers, and we had some success with it as well. The other thing, so posting individual pets on your public social media page, but many shelters nowadays, and I encourage you to develop a Facebook page for your volunteers or a Maddies Pet Forum page for your volunteers, and you can have a specific area that when you have foster pets available, you post them directly to your fosters that are out there, so that people who might not have a pet in the system can use that. Another concern, so that's foster care recruiting. Another concern is just tracking foster caregivers, and how do we keep track of them? How do we know where they are in the process? When we had our foster-based adoption program, we used ShelterLuv, and I loved ShelterLuv for being able to track foster caregivers. Greg, any chance you want to talk a little bit about ShelterLuv capabilities?
I think one of the challenges that is presented by a foster-based program or a shelter program that has a foster at scale is just an orientation around the people that are housing your animals. So approaching it the same way you would a sort of a shelter environment where you have a single physical location tends to fall apart when you end up in a foster situation. You really need to be able to track an animal down to the person level, to be able to contact them to see, are they running at capacity? Am I overtaxing the same few foster parents, and am I going to burn them out? Or am I sort of doing a better job spreading them around my general willing or willing to be foster parent population?
Any other?
Just taking a step back, just out of curiosity, how many people here would rate yourself as very technologically savvy?
Ooh.
Okay, I just want to know who we're talking to here. And how many as very untechnologically savvy? Okay, so we've got, just want to know the audience. Okay. Well, so what I can talk a little bit about is recruitment and the project that we're doing with Maddies. So one thing that AdoptAPetcom is experimenting with, and it looks like it's going to be successful, is we have these 4.5 million unique visitors coming to our site every month. That's a lot of people, and they're not all instantly adopting. And the question that we had with Maddie's Fund was, are some of these people potential fosters? Are they maybe not ready to adopt? Are they just sort of looky-loos? Like, who are these people, and can we turn them into fosters? So we've been running an experiment where we've allowed shelters and rescues to post their adoptable pets on our site and also mark them as fosterable. And we wanted to see if we added a button, would people say, hey, I'm interested in fostering that pet? And it turns out the answer is a gigantic yes. we're seeing a lot of people clicking that, I'm interested in fostering that pet. And the question then becomes, which we're working on now, is are they just interested in fostering that pet as a possible adopting that pet, or are they actually a person who is interested in fostering animals in general and who might, at least for some period of time, be able to foster pets? So we're experimenting with that, but if this pans out, the next step for us would be to allow shelters to post not yet adoptable but fosterable pets to that audience database, and it might be a big database of people that we can start to build for you and then give you a way to present to meet those people. So that's coming soon, but hopefully that'll become a big new input for people interested in fostering.
So one of the things that we wanted to mention is that we, at Maddies Fund, we developed this tool called Maddies Pet Assistant, and part of the reason for doing that was also to help people bring in an animal into their household with the process of adjusting that. So Sheila, want to say a little bit about it?
Yeah, so Maddie's Pet Assistant is a tool for support of both adopters and foster caregivers. Is there anyone out in the audience who uses Maddie's Pet Assistant?
Oh, good.
A couple of you, great.
Ooh, look at that.
Talking about it related to foster care today. So it's a tool that when the foster caregiver goes home, if you use PetPoint, ShelterLuv, Animal Shelter Manager, that's all we have for right now, there's an automatic upload of your data into the Maddie's Pet Assistant system. Otherwise, you can manually manually enter it into the system. And the foster pet and foster caregiver are connected. They download an app, and they're provided with support. So there are surveys that are sent out on a regular basis, day 1, 3, and up to a month after they go into foster care, if they're in foster care that long. And they ask them about most common problems that foster pets face when they go in the home. And then they complete the survey, they're sent an automated response based on their answer. So if the kitten's having problems with diarrhea, it asks there's a follow-up question about the severity of that diarrhea. And then they're sent an automated response saying you should call your foster coordinator, or it sounds pretty mild, just keep observing and check in. So it provides a low level of support so that you all can focus on the more challenging problems. And we've had a lot of great feedback on the foster caregiver and the adopter portion of Maddie's Pet Assistant.
So if you want to learn more about it, come up to the booth upstairs in Maddie's area, and we can give you a demo of it. So second most asked question, and this is not for all those to use technology savvy people here, it was really sort of what we call basic table stakes. How do you get started on using systems? What should we even look at? What's out there that for a shelter or a rescue that doesn't have anything, what would you want to do? And lots of areas of interest here, all the way from how do we put in a shelter management system to how do we just keep track of things. So Mike, you want to start?
Hardware part first. Greg's going to talk about the hardware, and then Greg always talks about the hardware.
Starting on one end of the spectrum, sometimes we'll hear things as sort of simple and basic as, I don't have Wi-Fi in my shelter, I don't know how I'm going to do it, the cost is exorbitant. And then all the way on the other end of the spectrum, if you're foster-based, everybody has at least a phone or a tablet or a computer, and so the hardware is not the issue, but the connectivity and keeping everybody synced together and on the same page becomes the issue. So speaking to the whole spectrum is going to be difficult here. But we find ourselves frequently recommending to people not to wait for the full budget to come through and the full overhaul and to wire up the whole entire building. Those things cost a fortune. They take forever to get done. There are now ways to build, to buy mobile hotspots and bring Wi-Fi into buildings that isn't already there. We brought Wi-Fi into this room, right? Mm-hmm. These can be run off phones. You can buy dedicated devices for them. But we would sort of typically push people into making smaller hardware decisions just to get things rolling rather than wait for a huge budget to come through and a big overhaul of a facility.
Yeah. Along those lines, just as again, sort of a survey question, we're going to keep asking these very high-tech survey questions with your arms. Who uses Chromebooks in the room? Yeah, I mean that's just one simple example of here's a great piece of hardware that's relatively cheap that can fall into the river or get trampled by a dog, you don't lose everything you had. And just to always keep that idea in mind. Obviously, the environment's tough on any of our equipment, and we can do a lot with these relatively inexpensive solutions right now.
Just so you know, that is a inexpensive laptop.
Yeah, sorry. So for those of you who didn't raise your hands, it's an inexpensive laptop that only runs, it's pretty web-based kinds of applications, mostly through Google Chrome. In terms of the getting started, we need to set something up to solve X problem side of things. One of the other issues that often seems to come up is we want one platform to do everything. How many people have sort of said that or thought about that before? I think that came up, and it maybe came down a little further down the survey. I think it's worth talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, and I think a lot of the super techie people in the room would, speak to this is much more depth than I can. It's just not going to happen, and that's also okay, because now we can, in a good way, string together tools that really work, say for whatever you might need to do. So if it's communication, and we'll talk about some of these tools with more specifics a little further down the line, but communicating with your staff, managing a project, scheduling stuff, and then stringing all of those tools together with yet another product. The big theme is, what do you need to do? And chances are that problem's already been solved. And as we often say, the solution may not have like a paw print next to it. It might not be an animal welfare specific solution, but it's really important to go into these problems assuming that someone solved this and we can do this. And we'll talk about more of those as we go down the line with these specific areas.
Yeah.
If I could just add, there's a price you pay, and some of you may have experienced this, when you do get a one solution does everything thing, and that price is it might not be great at everything, and you're kind of locked in. So it's a back and forth of, do you try to get one thing that does a lot of things, or do you get the best of this and the best of that? And generally speaking, technologically, where it's good to have everything housed in one program is when there's important data sharing that's happening. So it's nice to have a donor program that also does email, because it's the same world, but you wouldn't expect that program to manage fosters necessarily, or do instant messaging. So if you're going to look for a solution that combines things together so you can want one system, look for a solution that's all dealing with the same information, so information lives and touches where it needs to touch.
Yeah, I think very often, so I've been in this business for longer than I want to remember, but when I look for something out there, I always start with a Google search, right? So volunteer management, go out. Okay, there are thousands of those systems. So how do you distinguish what's actually good and what's not good? And I have a deep-rooted distrust in the rating systems like Yelp and so on that I think they're all rigged. So I like to ask friends, right? Ask people that I know have tried this before. This is another commercial for Maddies Pet Forum coming up here, but it's a good thing.
Have you heard of Maddies Pet Forum?
It's not the last one. So it's a good thing to ask people that you know and trust out there. That's actually always good, right? And once you make friends, you meet people in a place like this, and you have conversations about these things. Following up on those conversations and getting their advice is one of the best ways of sort of parting the wheat from the chaff in a search for something good.
And one thing that kept coming up in this discussion as we were talking about this particular topic is look outside of the industry. So this morning we were talking about how Austin Pets Alive uses Trello, and Trello is typically it was designed to be a software task management tool.
Who uses Trello?
Oh,
wow.
Good.
People have heard of Trello.
Yeah.
So people are using, Austin Pets Alive is using Trello to manage their foster program. Right, so you don't have to look inside the industry for these kinds of solutions. The processes or the problems, the information problems you're trying to solve have been solved somewhere. It might just not be in our industry yet.
So one thing that also came up was a lot of interest in donor management and fundraising software. So, David.
So how many of you use some sort of online donor management program? software program. And of those, how many are specific to animal welfare? The program itself is specific to animal welfare. Okay. So a lot of you actually don't, which is interesting. And maybe that's because some of you are with public entities that aren't nonprofits or aren't doing fundraising. But there's a lot of programs out there, and a lot of them are good. I don't share Lars's severe distrust of ratings. But definitely talking to people are good. But there's a lot of programs that are out there that are for donor management. But the thing to pay attention to is they also try to do a lot of things, and that's good. So a lot of the donor management programs will also do emails and newsletter management, which does make sense because it's the same people. Donor management is ultimately not just accepting donations, right? You can do that with PayPal, right? People can just send you money. But it's managing the relationship with those people, and how do you track and know that this person gave on this date, and this person is a dog person, and this person gives at the $20 amount, and this person gave $1,000 amount. Wait a minute, some executive director better call that person and find out who this is. So most donor management systems try to do a number of different things, and that's good. And some of them do volunteer management. So I think the thing to do as you explore to find what management system works for you is to understand what is it that you actually need. And try to find one that's appropriately priced. Some are actually free, and that might work very well if you're a small organization. The key thing to pay attention to that I would say before you start with any donor management program is you've got to find out, can you get your data out? That's a very important question, meaning if you outgrow the program, or if you discover that there's a better program out there, how easy does this company make it for you to take all of the names and all of the email addresses and all of the donor history and export that to some sort of a spreadsheet or something and import into a new program? Because if the program doesn't allow you to do that, you absolutely should not use it because you'll be locked in. So that would be my advice for donor.
One sort of quick housekeeping note: we do have a list of specific tools for delving into things like donor management and client relationship management, things like that we can send to everybody. So don't worry about.
We'll post it on Maddies Pet Forum.
Yeah, or post it on Maddies Pet Forum, for example. So that'll be available to everybody here and to your friends when you share it on Maddies Pet Forum.
Just to add one more thing about the process of online donor cultivation. So a good donor management system, right, a good fundraising system will allow you to very easily, without computer knowledge, create new campaigns, create new pages that are specific to whatever, maybe a particular animal or a particular emergency relief effort or a particular capital campaign. You're trying to build a new building or something. Any good donor, a fundraising program should allow you to do that, and then you just paste that link onto your web page, or you send it out an email, you put it on Facebook or whatever. But social media, as I'm sure you know, is a huge driver of spreading the word on things, and it's a way to bring people who are supporters and trying to turn those supporters into donors. And one thing that I've had a lot of success with is remembering. This is an interesting way to look at it, but remembering that you are selling something to donors, right? Whether it's online or in person, you're selling a feeling. They're giving you money to get something back. We don't think of it that way, right? But they are. They want to get a feeling, and if they're not getting that feeling, then they're not going to keep donating to you. And hopefully that feeling is a true feeling. You're not just giving someone a good feeling and not doing good work. And we've all heard of some organizations that are like that, but you're not that, right? So what you need to pay attention to is, as you start to push information out into social media, tell the individual stories of the pets, tell the good work that you're doing, and then give those people an opportunity to come in and support it. Simply having a donate link on your website, that's good, and that's important for people who already know you, they're coming there to donate, but that's not good enough. You really need to use social media to let people see the work you're doing, get the feeling, and then let them become a part of that, and then follow up with them and let them know that this is how your money is being used, and this is the good that you did, and that's what a good donor management system allows you to do, is to build those relationships and continue to sell that feeling so people will continue to purchase that feeling. It's a crass way to think about it, but I think it's helpful to remember, and that's how you build a big support database.
Other thoughts on this? No. Okay, next item that of general interest was how do you stay in touch with the community? How do you actually create a community around your shelter? How do you communicate with them? How do you get in touch with them and so on? How do you work with other shelters that may be in your vicinity or as part of the community? So you want us? This is Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this is, so I'll speak mostly to the communicating with other shelters, working with other shelters part, because honestly, that's a lot of what I end up doing. That becomes a little bit more of an internal task, right? So this isn't as much reaching out to the wide world, donations, things like that, but it's simply sort of expanding the walls of your organization, and first recognizing, forgetting about the technology part for a second, that the challenges that we're all facing in animal welfare are community level problems. And I think that folks in this room who, thankfully you all had the wherewithal to take time out of your busy schedules and come all the way here, are probably aware of that. But sometimes it's hard to remember that when we're back home. And sometimes to be honest, some people haven't realized that yet, right? And so what can we use technology for to bring us, as sort of hokey as it might sound, to bring us together in these endeavors? I'm going to talk about this platform twice today, but it's important. Who uses shelter animals count? Awesome.
Very good.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. One of the things that we always recommend people do at the community level is get on Shelter Animals Count, start using it, but also use the coalition builder. Who's used the coalition building tool in Shelter Animals Count? Okay, some of you, not as many. Brief explanation, and Sarah Kent can smack me in the face if I get it wrong. It's a tool to bring your data together with your friends, not sharing it necessarily with the wide world, but a way for the community, in this case, maybe it's the municipal shelter with the 501c3, with some rescue groups and so on, to say, how are we doing? How are we doing with our goals? The data side of things only really matters if it's measuring progress or maybe stagnation toward a goal. So I think that Shelter Animals Count is a great way to work together with your community in that way, with the other organizations in your community. Going a bit beyond that, it's actually not too dissimilar. It's not from what you might do within your own organization, right? So we have to communicate with each other. Who uses Slack? Slack. So Slack is it's a communication platform. You can, for those of you who have not used it, this is what it looks like. So, you can set up essentially on the left. I think of them as 1990s, as it sounds. Essentially rooms, or communication channels with certain groups, certain people, and things like that, and manage that communication. So, again, going back to working with the different organizations, different stakeholders in your community, it's a really efficient tool to do that, and to keep communication in one place. This is a little bit of an aside, but it's an important one. It's okay to have communication and technology policies in writing for your organization. Who has those? Yeah. So some of you, which is great. And so it's okay to say, you know what, this is not a commercial for Slack, this is just an example. We're gonna use Slack for this kind of communication, and we're gonna use Maddie's Pet Forum for this kind of communication, and so on and so on. That certainly helps with maintaining that community and maintaining the sort of internal work you're doing, because it eliminates the inefficiency of like, oh, I didn't get the text. Did you send that email? It's like, it drives me nuts.
Just again, not a commercial for Slack, but just so you understand what it is, because there's a reason it's one of the fastest growing productivity tools. It's basically think of it as an instant messaging system where you can talk to one person directly and no one else can see what you're saying, and that comes in a feed on your computer or on your phone. You can do it from your phone. So you'll receive a message on your phone that is just like getting a text or any other instant message, but it's in Slack and you can reply. And the record is always there, so you can go back and find things. Or you can make a group chat, so you're talking to a group of people, or you can create a group around a particular project that you're working on. So it can be adoption, and it could have all your adoption people, whenever you talk into that, they see on their phone or on their computer. And they can also manage what happens. It could ping them that a new message is them, or it could just be something that they can go back and check whenever they want. Or they can be pinged when their name has been specifically mentioned. And you can share files, and you can share videos, and it's searchable. So if you wanted to say, what happened to that person's application that we were talking about a year ago, you can find it instantly. It's all on Slack. And so it's this very, very fast-moving, dynamic way to talk to one person, to talk to a group, to talk about a subject. You can invite someone from outside of your organization to be a part of a Slack group. And it really is a useful tool for sharing communication and sharing information.
And I think an important point what Mike mentioned is that it eliminates the need for a lot of email. I mean, we all feel we all get overburdened in email. This is a much less intrusive way, and it is much easier accessible, and you have things in context when you look back for it later.
Did you have a question?
Yes. What is the difference between that and Facebook Messenger? Because I'm pretty sure everybody in here has Facebook.
Yeah.
Then, my organization, we have 2 people and about 6 volunteers. And I'm just overwhelmed with all these websites, that I need to have to keep up with the data and Trello and now Slack and our quick Facebook page. And I'm like, okay, who's going to come and help me do this? Because we're in the pound, 7 of them, pulling animals and arranging transports and that. And I'm just like, okay, now there's another thing I have to do.
So,
14-hour day today, or
no, and you raise a really, really, thank you for bringing that up, by the way. So the question, and man, what's your name?
Angela. And I think you were in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, good to
And I was like,
yeah. So what Angela asked essentially is, why the heck are you telling me to do another thing with all this technology? I already have Facebook and so on, and it's a valid point. I think the big picture point is, and David has said this before, if you have a system that works to get whatever you need to get done, and it's, as simple as, hey, I just told, John Smith down the street to do it, and it happened, and that's the most efficient system, then you have a system. Using technology for the sake of using technology is, I think everyone here would agree, is a really bad idea. The items that we're suggesting are by no means prescriptive. They're tools that have worked for lots and lots of people to make operations more efficient, and everything so far is free, So if you already have a system that works, use it. To your specific question, the other question that Angela has is, how is Slack different than Facebook Messenger? Facebook Messenger is akin to sort of a text messaging program platform with the sort of group messaging abilities and things like that. And again, if that works for you, that's great. Slack allows for just a lot more flexibility in terms of setting up different channels, including other items, so attaching links and files, and having all of that, as David said, all that work in context, where Messenger usually is not, it's not quite as effective, and it's easy to go back and say, oh, when we did that adoption event last spring, you can't go to your spring 2017 adoption channel and check that quite as easily. Does that help answer your question?
yes.
Okay, and don't worry, you don't have to do anything.
Wait, Sheila, yeah. You don't. Okay, go ahead.
Just one comment on this. I would propose that all of us in this room, in one way or another, are constrained by process. You could think of what you're doing like an assembly line. And in your case, there's 6 of you. You said you go to the local pound, you pull these dogs, maybe cats also, and do you transport or you try to find homes for them? Both. So any of us, and so that's a very different organization than somebody here who is from a very large shelter, for example. But all of us can look at what we're trying to do from a systems perspective and say somewhere along this line there's a bottleneck. There's something that's constraining my ability to do more, to save more animals, to be more efficient. The technology ought to be brought to bear on the bottleneck, as opposed to this is new and cool and it's better than Facebook Messenger because it has X and Y and Z features. And so I would propose that any of us could just put down a piece of paper and sort of map out our organization and also point to the piece of the process that is constraining us. And it's that situation where you should reach out, you should look for solutions that exist that somebody else has already used. APA, for example, massive foster program, right? It's a huge piece of what they do because they have so many of these big dogs that don't do well in the shelter. So it makes sense that they were to find something like Trello to try to attack that because that became a real constraint for them.
So just shifting gears here a little, a lot of questions were also about communication with the community at large. What tools do you use aside from the obvious Facebook and so on, and how do you deal with all these comments that come in, not all of which are positive? So anyone wants to attack that?
I can start that from what I've been taught from the wonderful Sharon Fletcher there in the back. In terms of social media, we at Maddies Fund don't always get positive feedback on the posts that we give, and I'm sure how many of you can sympathize with that? Anybody in the audience? We get negative stuff every so often. And this is something that we deal with and we talk about on a regular basis. So when a post comes in that is negative, it gets sent to the people who that topic is relevant to, and we have a discussion about, do we respond to this post or do we ignore it? And is it something that if we respond, this person is going to listen to us and have a good conversation, or is this someone who's just kind of ranting, and if we respond, they're going to keep responding back for the next never ever stop. And in some situations, we're going to end up deleting and blocking people from posting. And so that question isn't really about using technology, but that's how I was taught to manage. Sharon, did I do okay?
So I think there's definitely a technology angle to it, though, because in this day and age, things propagate so much faster. We all heard about the fake news and so on, and unfortunately, these platforms, the social media platforms, allow people to repost and spread things that may not be correct. So I think it's incumbent on all of us to try to make sure that we understand what goes on in our community that relate to us. Make sure you understand, follow what's going on out there, and make sure you actually respond to things that before it gets out of hand. I don't know if anyone,
Yeah, it's, as Lars said, a feature of these technologies are now people, and large numbers of people can talk to us and we can talk back to them. And the question is, how much effort do you put into that? You should definitely have someone in your organization who, depending upon the size of your organization, might be more than one person who is the voice. And I think you need to take seriously when someone is saying something negative to you, on Facebook, because it's so easy to spread, so easily spread, and to spread out on Twitter, that unless you, like Sheila said, you really think this person is just maybe a little bit nutty and is not even worth the time, because you're just going to add fuel to the flame. With AdoptAPet, we have a lot of people that talk to us. We have a big Facebook presence. We get lots and lots of emails, and I think I'd be correct in saying our experience is that you should talk back when you can. And even if someone is saying something negative, frequently it's very easy for someone to just to pop off. But when a human being responds and says, wow, I'm so sorry, this makes me feel bad and I want to help you, so many times people are just so happy to get a response, and they feel heard, and now they feel okay, and now they feel vindicated. And so sometimes it's just worth that one response just to see, is it that, or are they just now going to pile on? But I think that is sort of the good and the bad of social media is bad things can be spread about your organization very, very quickly. And so it's worth a little bit of effort to just try to put out a fire and have someone who's good at making people feel heard, because a lot of time that's the only thing that someone is talking to you. They just want to feel heard.
Okay, so one thing that's near and dear to everybody here on the panel is trying to communicate between systems. It came up a number of times in the surveys, and one thing that I think a lot of us are facing right now is that demand and supply are not evenly balanced. So trying to find animals in the other parts of the community, or maybe even outside your community, and transporting them is becoming a much more pertinent issue. So how do you make sure you understand where the animals are, and how do you make sure that we get them to the right places? So Mike.
This is there's one relatively new tech solution for this that's still very much in the works, but you can get on and start using it today if you want. Who uses Doobert? Has anyone used Doobert before? Cool.
DOOBERT.
Yeah, Greg's going to head there right now. Doobert is, I always describe it as, it's a matchmaker for shelters who would like to, or organizations who need to transport animals, and those who are able and willing to receive them, and then provides the piece in the middle, the actual transportation portion of things. So I always say, like, it's like Match.com and Uber and Amazon Prime for dogs and cats, you know, all mixed together. So that's something that, again, you can get on and start using today. And I know that there are some other folks in the audience who are helping to work on Doobert, but that's a relatively new technology that you can start using. And I think that Greg built into, you have some. Nothing in particular.
Doobert was used very successfully in the wake of Hurricanes Harvey and Irma. So, young technology solutions get tested in situations like this, and the reports are that Doobert did very, very well in both of those situations.
Yeah, I also want to mention that a number of us have started getting involved in talking about how we get all these systems to talk to each other and try to create some hub or some way of exchanging information more easily, so that when you transfer animals, you also transfer the paperwork and the records between shelters. So, yeah.
About this one, about Doobert. Are the major players that are involved in Are the major players that are involved in animal transport, HSUS, ASPCA, when these huge disasters hit, are they on there? We're a shelter in Westminster. We had a ton of space with the last I want to say, thank you, yes. We could not find anywhere or anybody to talk to get animals from them and help.
Yeah.
We can easily house 75 dogs. I think we had 15 at the time. We could find no one to help us.
I think we all realized that when Harvey happened, that we were being extremely reactive and we were way behind in terms of providing the communication and so on. And we tried to start working on it, and then Irma happened, and we were still behind and so on. So we're trying to now to prepare for next season, but we're still not quite there. We're working on it, but still not quite there. You want to?
Yeah, so I've been involved in the disaster rescue, but not in the transport of animals component. I have literally nothing to say about that, because I've been involved in the how do we provide people who are on the ground and who are leaving their homes or can't get to their homes a single place to report that their pets are in need or their animals are in need. It might be horses or donkeys or whatever, that their animals are in need, and how do we get that information into one place and into the hands of whatever is the appropriate animal organization that is authorized to work in that area, and then how do we track those animals when they get in the system so that person will be able to find their pet regardless of whether they went into a chameleon shelter or Pet Point or ShelterLuv or whatever. So there's a lot of work going on that. But unfortunately, I have literally nothing to say about the transporting of those pets in those situations.
One of the things I think everybody could do, and this is absolutely low tech, is create alliances up ahead. So if something happens, and we actually had an example of that in California with the wildfires last October, where there were existing alliances between shelters in the area, and exactly what you're mentioning happened, that shelters that had space pulled animals from the shelters close to where the disaster was taking place to make room for new animals. And it went as far as going way outside the area, so basically animals were sort of sent away to other areas that didn't have the problems. these are things that you can all think about in advance and think about who do I want to work with, and make sure that when things then go wrong, that you have those relationships set up already. Something completely different that also came up a number of times was what we at Maddies Fund now call access to care. So what are the kind of things that, what do you do for people who either can't afford care or for people who don't know how to get care? And since we have two vets, I forgot to mention that Mike is also a vet on the panel. I'll let them speak a little to this.
Access to veterinary care is an issue that I'm sure is how many of you have concerns about people in your community getting access to veterinary care. Yeah, it's a really emerging or pre-existing concern for a lot of us, and there are certainly tools out there and things on the horizon, but I think historically us in the animal welfare industry, we're the ones who've been kind of the only people thinking about this issue, and most of our access to veterinary care programs are really in shelters, and if it's not there, it's really hard to find them. A couple things to talk about. How many of you have taken advantage of the Banfield Foundation grants related to veterinary care? We have a couple of you in the audience. That's great. Go to their website, check it out, but they do have grants that provide access to veterinary care. There's probably other organizations as well that will give your shelter a grant so that you can provide access to the underserved. How many of you have heard about an organization called Waggle? Waggle is, nobody's heard of Waggle.
Wow.
Waggle, and that's because Waggle's a pretty new organization, but they are working on I'm sure many of you do crowd fundraising for pets in your shelter, as well as pets that you're trying to keep out of your shelter. Waggle's something for you to keep an eye on. We have a grant out to them for they started as crowd fundraising in association with veterinarians. So the veterinarian, someone goes to the veterinarian, they can't afford the care for their pet, and the veterinarian applies for Waggle, and Waggle does all the social media and advertising and that type of thing to tell the pet story and to do public crowd fundraising. And there's also a shelter arm that's being tested for that as well. So keep an eye out for that. Mike, do you have anything else to add?
Waggle was the, that was in terms of a new technology, that was the big one. So definitely worth keeping an eye on that website for sure.
There's also, there are also companies that are providing access to veterinarian advice, like talking to a veterinarian remotely where you don't have to go and pay for a whole visit. Pet Coach is one, and I think they have a free option where you can talk to a veterinarian one time for free or something like that, and they're actually owned now by Petco. There's Vets Plus More. And these could become useful because they might just help people answer quick questions about whether they even need to take their pet into the vet or not. So this is sort of telemedicine. And or for $5, in some of the cases, you can talk to a vet for 15 minutes, and you can video chat with a vet on Skype, that sort of a thing. So we'll have that in our list of technologies as well.
Yeah, and I'm glad that David brought up the telemedicine options. I think something to be aware of. I don't know how many other veterinarians might be in the room, and I don't say this to offend anybody, but as a sort of member of the profession, we really drag our feet in terms of taking on new technology very often. And I bring that up because you might hear from veterinarians that you talk to that, oh no, you can't do anything without an animal being in front of you. I can't even tell you if it's a dog or a cat without seeing it, laying on of hands. It's not true.
Okay, one last thing before we go to Q&A. So a lot of questions about internal communication, just basic document management. What do we do inside the shelter or inside the rescue to help us off the ground?
As we were preparing for this, what we kept coming back to is if you find yourself reaching for a piece of paper, there's an opportunity to do something better than you're doing it today. That's a very, very simplified version of a sort of attacking your processes and deciding which ones are probably breaking. So the reason you reach for the paper is because something else wasn't working, something else wasn't connected the way it should have been. And in the Q&A, if anybody wants to, you could throw out a suggestion. Hey, we haven't been able to get rid of paper in this step, and we can try to troubleshoot, one in specific to walk you through how we would do it. Mike's fond of saying, have a human brain do what a human brain can, and have the software remember everything for you. So that's another way to sort of think about trying to link together systems so that you remove the human error and the human memory, which of course doesn't work nearly as well.
There's also, do any of you use Scannable or Evernote? So Evernote is an app that you can have on your phone for making notes, and it's very useful, and it's got a lot of really great features. And Evernote owns this app that is separate from that called Scannable, and I have it on my phone, and it uses the it uses the camera on your phone, but it takes a picture. It really, really makes it easy. It just looks for anything that looks like a document, and it just snaps a picture of it with the flash, and then it processes it, and it cuts the surroundings, and it turns it into like you just scanned it. And it is insanely good. And I use it all the time for just any time there's a piece of paper and I've got to turn it into a PDF and I wish I had a scanner. I do not use a scanner anymore. I've used it for legal documents, for certificates, for receipts. I just can't say how cool it is. It is just so easy to use, and then it'll piece together. If you did 10 pages, it'll let you check or uncheck. If you didn't like the scan, redo it, reshuffle the order, and then it puts it together, and you can text it right from there or email it right from there, and you have just scanned a whole document with nothing but your phone. It's really, really good.
I should mention also that almost everything we mentioned here, I think probably everything we mentioned here, you can start using these tools for free and find out, is it really what you want to use, right? It's not, you don't have to make an investment except the investment in time and effort
and for a lot of especially smaller organizations, you can start using stuff for free, and most of these tools you can just keep using them for free because paid versions are associated with volume, and so if you're maintaining a volume beneath that, they're good to go.
And always ask for a nonprofit discount.
Oh, yeah. So April said, really good point. Always ask for a nonprofit discount, because so many places offer them, and they don't necessarily shout them from the rooftops.
And I enjoy TechSoup as well.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. I was going to bring that up. TechSoup, absolutely look at TechSoup. They offer a lot of for-pay tools for free or at very deep discounts. And all you got to do is sign up and apply. And if you're a 503c, then you can get approved and you can get these things very, very cheap or for free.
The G Suite, who uses Google Suite, Google Drive, all that's right. So if you sign up for the nonprofit G Suite account, one of the things it comes with is $10,000 worth of Google AdWord advertising. I will be the first to say, I don't know how to actually use that $10,000 effectively. Maybe some of these folks do. Maybe some of you folks in the audience do. I know that there's someone back there who does. But that's yet another thing that you often don't hear about. But man, that could go a long way to getting your message out.
Yes, we have a heckler in the back. Heckler.
So, I just have a hands-up question. How many people have IT support in their organization? Okay, that's really, really great. If you don't, you should really think about that, particularly when you're looking at your budgets, because all of the things that have been talked about, some of them really are plug and play, but some of them need to be modified to your specific system. It's not always easy to do. And that person that's been in your organization for 15 years, that is your tech person, when they leave, everything that was tech in your organization leaves with them.
Yeah.
I would encourage people to think about it as either a regular staff position or use a consultant. That really works. You don't have to pay them everything, but you can bring them in for specific problems that you have some community solutions for. So I just encourage that.
And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention, going back now to stuff that's out there, free stuff, Google Docs, Google Sheets. Raise your hand if you use Google Docs. Okay, so for those of you that don't, Google Docs is just, it's like having Word or something like that, but it's a web-based. So you can go to Google Docs and you can create a document, and it's on the web, and it's the same tools as like writing it in Microsoft Word, but you can then share it with other people. And if they have that link, they can also edit that document. They can literally edit it right as you're editing it. And so you can see who made the edits. You can go backwards in time if you need to figure out what did this look like in the past.
You can stop ever hearing the question, wait, did I send you the right version of that? Like,
Yeah, because there's one true version and everyone's working, and then you can download it as a Word doc or as a PDF and send it. But it's a great collaboration tool, and you can store them in folders online, and access them from your phone or from any computer anywhere if you're logged in. And the same thing with Google Sheets. Google Sheets it's like an Excel spreadsheet, but it's online. So you can do all the things you can do with an Excel spreadsheet, but you're doing it from your browser online, and somebody else who you allow to share that with can also be working on that spreadsheet, and you're all working on the same true information. That's super helpful and free.
I just wanted to mention that Microsoft also offers their entire suite of Office 365 products. All of them are web-based and cloud-based as well for free for nonprofits. You can actually just apply for that through TechSoup as well. But similar to the G Suite and those set of tools, you actually get the real version of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all that. And so where you're dealing with some people who may not have access to the Google Docs format, you can use the Microsoft as well. It's completely free.
Okay, so let's open up for questions in general. We have somebody running here with a microphone, so yeah. So when you ask a question, please stand up. So.
Hi, I'm Jackie Roach. I'm with Tasha Blue Rescue. I'm curious. I love Maddie's Pet Assistant, but I wondered what maybe AI technologies might be doing. Every time I use OK Google or I use Alexa, I keep thinking, how can we bring that AI technology to animal rescue and helping people with problems with their pets?
So Sheila and I worked together on Maddies Pet Assistant originally, and one of the things we wanted to get out of it was to collect all the information that comes up through people answering the surveys that are there. So in turn, that turned into a Maddies Pet Forum. So the two of them are connected, and what we want to do with that is we really want to make sure that any discussion that comes up. So if you pose a question in Maddies Pet Forum and somebody answers it, that we preserve those answers and it becomes searchable. So we do have that built into Maddies Pet Forum. And we're using machine learning to make sure that we actually extract the best information. It's based on upvoting, downvoting, saying these are the best answers and so on, but also what are the things that people really care about? What are the big things that come up, and how do you do that? It has been suggested that we should use the voice activated as well. We may get there. It's certainly technology that's available in what we are using right now, but we're not quite there yet. Do you want to?
Yeah, and it is on. You can hear me. Just with regard with Maddie's Pet Assistant, one of the features that I felt was lacking was the ability, so it had the surveys, but if I'm a foster caregiver and I have a problem now and a survey isn't available, I could email the organization through the survey, but you might not be able to respond right away. So that's one of the ideas behind Maddie's Pet Forum, is that our foster caregivers can go to the forum and ask the question there, and hopefully there's lots of other people online. And as Lars says, we're building this great knowledge base there. We'll have lots of solutions to problems. So probably not quite as techy as things like Alexa, but we're working towards it.
Since AI came up, just to entice, and we're talking about technology for a second, there's new technologies out there, and AdoptAPet, and with the help of Maddie's Fund, is looking for ways to make them come to life. So you mentioned AI, that's artificial intelligence. So that's when algorithms can learn things about what people are saying or what people are doing, and then start to provide the right information. And also Lars mentioned machine learning. That's another tool that just means seeing people repeating tasks and then knowing what they're going to do and sort of doing it for them. So AdoptAPet.com is experimenting with artificial intelligence and machine learning. For example, we know that a lot of times when people are on our site and they are clicking our button to send an email to a shelter to inquire about a pet, they're actually asking something that is present on the page. They're just not seeing it, and that's wasting the time, and it's very annoying to shelters and rescues. Do you know what I'm talking about? So we are well aware of this. So first of all, we actually just built a system that is similar to Craigslist, not the bad part of Craigslist, where when someone emails a shelter or rescue directly from our site, it's actually the reply to address is this weird thing that comes back to us and then goes to that person. And then when the person replies to shelter, it comes back to us and goes back. So we can see who is replying, who is not replying, what information is in there, and we can start to learn, oh, when someone asks this kind of a question, they don't get a reply, or look, this person is asking a question that we already had the information, and we can interrupt that, and we can have something that pops up and says, it's like, remember Clippy? It's like it looks like you're asking right, not the bad part. It looks like you're asking about an adoption process. Here is the answer to your question. Like we would know the answer to that question. So we're experimenting with ways to do that so you don't have to spend the time dealing with that kind of stuff if the information is there. And some of that may be us getting more information from you, like what's the cost for this pet or things like that, the adoption fee, so we can present that. So there's machine learning that can happen there that we're experimenting with. There's certainly understanding people's usage of the website and trying to show them the right pets. So it's not just a matter, for example, of where we are showing your animals to adopters. We would like to show the right animals to the right adopters that they can actively adopt. So if, for example, you're an organization that does home checks and you're not going to adopt someone who doesn't have a fenced yard, then really a person, if they tell us they don't have a fenced yard, should not be seeing your pets because they're just going to waste your time. And frankly, you're just going to waste their time. So we're looking for ways to use technology to do that. The other technology I wanted to talk about is you've heard of AR and VR, right? AR is augmented reality and VR is virtual reality. So just so you know, because this is going to be taking over our world pretty soon, augmented reality is when you look at a real space through your phone or maybe through your glasses, like Google Glasses, and some information about the thing you're looking at is put in your visual field. So you can be looking down the street with Google Glasses or with your phone and information about that business would pop up, or information about a discount on that business would pop up, or things. That's augmented reality. Virtual reality is when you actually put on the whole headset and you're suddenly out in outer space. And there's some interesting work being done with virtual reality to get someone the feeling of being with an animal or developing empathy for animals, something like that. But with augmented reality, that's here right now and very useful. IKEA has this really great app where you can look at your phone at your living room and you can see a couch and you can walk around and look at the couch and it's superimposing it there. So we've been playing around a little bit with what about if it's a dog in your living room? And we actually have done this. It's just cute at this point. I'm not sure it's going to be world-changing, but we have the ability to take not an actual live pet, but or a video of a live pet, but of a fairly realistic, cartoony kind of pet, and say, what does this animal look like in your house? So we're experimenting. Would that cause someone to adopt? Would someone want to know what size animal? Could we give different types of animals? So, or for example, augmented reality, if you have a physical shelter, that could allow someone to walk through the shelter and just use their phone, and instead of kennel cards, they could get tons of information by just pointing their phone to looking at the kennel. So there's all kinds of technologies that are on there, and we're going to try to make sure that they serve you and that they serve the animal welfare world. So we're on it, and it's interesting.
Other questions?
I want to return to the rabble-rousing question about IT support, because everything you're talking about is either maintaining something that exists, keeping up with updates, evaluating new technologies, etc. What's the actual right skill set for IT support in a resource-constrained shelter headcount?
Most enterprise software now, the type of software you would run inside an organization like yours, looks and works a lot more like the kinds of things that you use in your personal life, which is to say they are simple, they are free to get started with, they're really easy to use, they don't need a lot of training, installation, the sort of associated services that people think of when you thought of an IT installation from, call it 10 or 20 years ago. What we see a lot of is just a younger person. A younger person will show up in a younger person will show up in an organization and say, "This doesn't really make sense to me. Why don't we just use X?" And I would, especially when you're talking about resource-constrained situations, I would look to, and we're talking younger than any of us, but I would look to those kinds of people because the software and digital products are second nature to them in a way that they aren't to us. And so I think that's actually your best resource. And it's a free resource. You probably have volunteers, right, who are from this demographic. They may have grown up with a phone in their hand. They just think about the world a little bit differently than we do.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that as well. I mean, too often we don't think of volunteers as being the expert in areas like IT, and I think that is a great resource. There are lots of people who would like to volunteer their ability and to do this in time to so. Other questions? Yep, right here.
Thank you. For Adopt a Pet, you made a comment in the beginning about being able to list fosters. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, I use rescue groups to filter through everything, through Adopt a Pet, Pet Finder, my own website. Yep. I never clicked that foster button on rescue groups because I didn't think it filtered to anyone. If I click that, will it show on Adopt a Pet that kitten can be fostered?
Not yet.
Not yet.
For the moment, for the shelters during this test who manually upload their pets to Adopt a Pet, where it's not coming in through rescue groups or Pet Point or ShelterLuv, they can mark a pet as not only adoptable but fosterable. And if this test proves out to be useful, which is what we think it will, then we will go to the shelter softwares and go to Richard at rescue groups and say, hey, collect this information, and if you're already collecting it, send it to us so you don't have to come onto our site to do it. And then the next step would be, hey, send us your actually not yet adoptable but fosterable pets. So we're getting there. Okay. So if your pets are getting onto our site from rescue groups, you can come and log in if you know your password to log into our website, and then after the fact check it if you want to be part of this.
Okay. Is there any benefit of me using just your site to update Adopt a Pet over rescue groups right now, besides the foster? Or is it okay to use the rescue groups to do everything all at once? I do it for time saving because I can do everything at once.
Well, is that how you're also getting your pets onto Pet Finder?
Yeah.
So if you stopped using rescue groups, you'd have to upload your pets to Adopt a Pet and then separately upload them to Pet Finder?
Oh, well, no, I'm still going to use rescue groups because it filters my whole website as well. But can I do anything else on your site opposed to doing it on rescue groups?
So if you load your pets directly onto AdoptAPetcom, you have access to other features that you can be using in there. Like we have a whole volunteer database and we've got reports. It might be worth logging in and having a look around.
Playing around, okay.
That doesn't mean, though, that you have to upload your pets directly to us. You can send them to rescue. We don't care. We just want to help you get your pets adopted in the easiest way possible.
Thank you.